pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello Booktube, I'm Shawn the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with a new tag that I just saw last night. I wasn't tagged. I'm gonna do it, and I hope that the originator of this tag forgives me because I want to expose this lovely tag and her channel to my corner of Booktube. So I hope that's an even trade because I know I wasn't tagged. I don't know this booktuber. Her name is Daniela, and her channel name is Only If for a Page. The tag is called the Contradictions Book Tag. Sounds fabulous. Let's dive right in. Please check out Daniela's channel. I've watched a couple of videos. I've watched this tag video, and I've watched her mid-year book freakout tag. She's lovely. She has good taste in books. Check her out. Question number 1. I love this genre, but I didn't like this book. Well, I only read basically one genre, literary fiction, which I would argue is not a genre. Genres are those lesser forms of literature that, came after literary fiction. I'm being at least 25% facetious here, people. In terms of literary fiction, there's a lot of crap. A lot. Probably almost half of literary fiction is total crap. So I've just chosen one at random that I hated, couldn't finish it, and I haven't talked about it for a while, and that's All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr, one of the most schlocky, horrifically, puke-worthily sentimental works of literary fiction that I've ever read half of. Oh, it was awful. I started to fantasize about the little girl's death because I just hated the sentimentality of that. And I like novels set during the war, and I'm an emotional reader. I like to connect with stories that are about hardship and trauma, and this one just rubbed me the wrong way. I hated it. Number 2. I rarely read this genre, but I love this book. Well, I'm not sure love is quite it, but I don't read genre fiction. But I did read a thriller from the 1950s, I believe, Mischief by Charlotte Armstrong. I read a little bit about it, and I thought, what the hell, I should try it, and I liked it a lot. It's about a couple from the boonies in America, and they're coming into the big city. I don't remember if it's Chicago or if we ever find out what the big city is, but they're coming in for a convention. I think the husband is getting a Salesman of the Year award or something. And the babysitter that they had arranged, I think it was maybe the wife's sister, canceled at the last minute. And so there they were, and they didn't have a babysitter, and so they finagled the babysitter. They arranged for a babysitter that they didn't know from the elevator man in that hotel, but they knew him, because they stayed there whenever they came into town, but they didn't know him really well, but they knew him, and so his sister or his sister-in-law came to be the babysitter, and she was strange, and they were a little bit uncomfortable leaving their kids with this odd young woman, and they should have listened to their intuition. It is very thrilling. It was made into a movie. It was, I believe it was one of, I think I've said before that it was Marilyn Monroe's first movie, but I think it's just one of her first movies, and the movie was called Don't Bother to Knock, 1951. I haven't seen the movie, but I recommend the book, and I don't think I want to ever read another thriller in my life. One and done, but it was good. Number 3, I love this trope, but I didn't like this book. Now, I struggle with the word trope. I have had, I wouldn't say an argument, but I used to throw a hissy fit whenever I heard it because I thought it's this word that nobody really knows what it means, and I still think that it kind of is. So the dictionary says a trope is a figurative or metaphorical use of a word or expression, but that's not how most people are using it. And then the second meaning, a significant or recurrent theme, a motif. I prefer to talk about themes. Something about the word trope just bugs me when it's used to talk about a theme. So I also struggle, once I finally accepted that yes, trope equals theme, it doesn't just mean a cliche or something or a figure of speech. It has this new meaning, this newfangled meaning. Once I accepted it, I realized I don't really think about my reading in terms of themes. I don't even really like to talk about themes. If you have followed my channel, I rarely mention the theme. It just sounds like a high school essay topic. Who cares what the theme is? I'll tell you a little bit about the story, and I'll tell you why I did or didn't connect with the characters. and what I thought of the writing, but I'm not big on talking about themes. So, this is a challenge for me to do. There's a couple trope questions here. So, I love this trope, this theme, but I didn't like the book. So, for the theme of this book, the trope, I would say, like, kind of post-colonial literature. It's Indian literature. Is that a theme? Is that a trope? With political violence. Yeah, so see, I just struggle. But I am interested in shapely fiction that explores those themes. And I hated The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy. It's one of the worst books I've ever read. I just absolutely hated it. I really liked her second book, but this one stunk. I have a full ranty review. I'm not going to repeat it here, and a lot of people out there are shaking their fingers at me because it's a very popular book, and I think I love Arundhati Roy, but I don't know what happened with this book. Whew, it was bad. Number 4, I hate this trope, but I love this book. So again, if we're talking about themes, I am not into Christian fiction. Actually, it doesn't bother me when it's Islamic or anything else, but when it's Christian, that's why I can't read. What's that novelist that everybody loves? She's written Gilead, Marilyn Robinson. No, too churchy for me. And even Anthony Trollope's novels about priests and stuff, too churchy for me. So, to my surprise, I adored this novel from the late 19th century by Mrs. Humphrey Ward, who we should call by her real name, Mary Augusta Ward. Hellback of Bannisdale, because it's about the clash of religious difference in the UK 19th century. The man's Catholic, and the woman he falls in love with is kind of an agnostic, but raised Anglican, I guess. They fall in love, but the religion is such a huge divide, and Mary Augusta Ward was very religious, but she still wrote a novel that sucked me right in, and it wasn't too churchy for me. I thought it was a really excellent novel that deserves a lot more attention. And, if you're worried about it being too churchy, look at me. I can't stand that shit, and I really, really liked it. So I have a full review of this. I'll put a link in the show notes. Number 5, I love this author, but I didn't like this book. Hands down, that would be Barbara Pym, one of my very most favorite writers. And this was one of the last books that she wrote, certainly in the last decade of her life, An Academic Question. She wrote it between the years 1970 and 72. It was published posthumously in 1986, but I don't think she really wanted it to be published, and boy, was she right if that was her wish. I am angry at her friend and biographer and literary executor Hazel Holt for making this come into the world, because it's a piece of crap. It's terrible. It's not funny. She was writing about themes that she was obviously not comfortable with. It just didn't work. There are other books that I thought broke the mold of her typical novels, and so I struggled to like them, but this one was just bad, and it shouldn't have been published. I have a ranty review about this. It's the only novel of hers that I hated, and I absolutely hated it. I'm getting all worked up just thinking about some of these books that I hated. This is probably the most interesting question. And number 6, I previously disliked a book by this author, but I loved this book. To me, that is such a fascinating question. And I have talked about this once or twice in my channel, but not for a long time, so I'll spend a minute or two, because my answer is none. Absolutely none. If I read one book by an author that I don't like, I will never, ever try them again, and I can't think of one instance where I did and liked the second book that I read by that author better. I've been racking my brains, and I don't think that I have a mental block. I think it's just actually true that if I don't like one book by an author, I will never try them again. Going back to the last question, scads and scads of books were the second book I read by an author I didn't like after loving the first one, or having loved quite a few of them, and there was one stinker in the bunch. But there's something psychological about me, one and done. Life's too short, so I don't think I've ever tried a book where the first book I read by them I didn't like. It's just not my thing. I think it's a big hole in my readerly personality, I suppose, but I think I'm having a good time and reading a lot of good stuff without getting therapy to work through that issue, but I think it is a little bit strange, don't you think? Number 7. I love this cover, but I didn't like this book. There's been a few, but the one that was a heartbreaker, because I love the cover so much, and I've gotten rid of the book, I think I gave it to Steve Donoghue, actually. And I hated the book, was an Irish novel, Language Go Down by Aidan Higgins. When was that published? It was published the year of my birth, 1966, and it was made into a movie. The screenplay was written by Harold Pinter. I haven't seen the movie. Maybe I should try it. It's only got a 3.5 star rating on Goodreads, but I was so disappointed. It was so cold. I didn't feel anything when I was reading it. It's about a once wealthy, well-respected Irish family that the 4 daughters that are left are aging. Most of them are unmarried. All of them are deeply unhappy, and the house is kind of falling down around them. And I just didn't feel anything. I mean, the prose was competent, but it just left me so cold. I hated it. And so I've had the cover image up for a few minutes. If I can find it, I'm going to put in a video of me salivating over the cover, because it had beautiful end papers and everything. So let's watch that for a minute. So this cover by, which I bought a month or so ago, an Irish novel, Language Go Down by Aidan Higgins. And I just think it's a gorgeous book, and the end papers is the same graphic. Like that. So yeah, this is a beauty. There, can't you appreciate the tragedy of this? I would classify this as a trauma in my reading life of recent years. How much the book disappointed me when it was one of the most beautifully put together books. Beautiful cover, beautiful end papers. Number 8. I don't like this cover, but I love the book. The obvious one is this Japanese novel. Look at this. This is one of those print-on-demand things. The Twilight Years by Sawako Ariyoshi, translated by Mildred Tahara. And it was originally published in English in 1984. And this is like, I got this off Amazon, and look how glossy it is. You can tell when the book's that glossy that it's one of those print-on-demand things. There are older editions of this that have a decent cover, but I bought this, it was cheap, and I loved the novel. Absolutely loved it. I read it early this year. I'll put a link in the show notes to my review, and I won't say any more about it, because I would like to also talk about this one. I didn't hate the cover, but the cover is not that interesting. I mean, I'm not sure about all those colors, especially the author. The Sea Change of Angela Lewis by Cynthia Proper Seton. And this is a little-known author that I discovered from the Book of Forgotten Authors by Christopher Fowler, which I did as a buddy read with Ange of Beyond the Pages. I'll put a link to our joint review. And that book introduced me to so many writers and books that I'd never heard of. And one of them was Cynthia Proper Seton, who was an American novelist on the East Coast and never got the recognition that she deserved. And this was a fabulous novel. I mean, I don't hate the cover, but I just think it deserves a better cover. The author's name is almost impossible to read, but please read the novel. It's really excellent. It is about the matriarch of a large family who, I don't think immediately after her husband dies, but somewhat later, she just up and disappears and F's off to Europe, but she disappears and has no contact with her family. But then they don't seem to care. So she made the right decision because they didn't really miss her. Gorgeous prose, a tad overwritten, but mostly just gobsmackingly fabulous writing. I love this book. So that's the end of the tag. So I'm going to tag a bunch of people. I'm going to tag Kim of Middle of the Book March, Greg of Supposedly Fun, Ros of Scallydandling About the Books, Heidi of My Reading Life, Steve Donoghue, of course, Yeri of Drawn to Stories, Brian at Bookish, Kit of Kit's World, and a couple channels that I've just discovered in the last month that I want you all to check out, and I would love them to do this tag. Craig and David of Shelf Possessed, and DJ at Indian Cooks and Books. That was fun. And everybody, don't forget, go check out her channel, Only If for a Page, and thanks for watching.